So the purpose of this webinar is really to go through what Bluebeam is about, right? So some of you here today are very old users, right? So when I say very old users, is you guys could be like easily 4 or 5 years old users, right? You may not know what else Bluebeam is. So I hope to actually cover those things in this webinar today. All right. Okay. So to start off, what is Bluebeam? All right. So if I put it very simply, Bluebeam is a PDF software, like just PDF. Okay. So it has everything that you have to do with a PDF, right? But Bluebeam's position as a PDF software is very special, right? It is known to be what you call perhaps the king of PDF. All right, I'm quoting from a fellow user, right? Because simply of the number of features that it has, especially for our industry, construction industry. So if you happen to be someone from maybe legal, healthcare, oil and gas, construction. Now, these four industries are the main industries which Bluebeam is used, right? Simply because they have certain strong features within each of them, right? Now, the next thing which I want to move on to is that, right? Okay, so what Bluebeam offers is that it does most of your functions, right? Like measurement, collaboration, editing, markup, all within the PDF function, right? So what it aims to do is that to promote communication, right? So whether you're here today as an owner, as a consultant, as an engineer, as a QS, all right, it's meant to use PDF to communicate, right? So while doing that, it's also meant to reduce, obviously, the usage of paper, right? Okay, so now the first key point of Bluebeam, all right, is called markup tools. Okay, the idea of markups may not be very widely used in Asia, right? So the word markup can mean different things for different people. If you are a QS, okay, the word markup can mean a measurement, can mean an area measurement, can mean a count measurement, all these sort of things. If you are a engineer, a markup can be a comment, a markup can be a picture that you place, right? So if you're an owner, then a markup can also be a picture or something, a status that you apply to a markup, right? But what Bluebeam does well is that it has a feature called tool chest, which I'll be showing you later. That tool chest is meant to save libraries of your functions, right? So if you do have common functions that you always use all the time, perhaps for QA/QC or you use for measurement, right? I will encourage you to save them under your tool chest, right? And obviously afterwards you have your reporting. So Bluebeam is pretty strong in the reporting function as well, right? So that's markups. Now, so let's jump into the software first. So yes, so what you can see here, this is Bluebeam, right? For those who are on the older versions, right, this is the new view of Bluebeam. It has been changed quite a bit already. Okay, so this has been changed since 2018.
Okay, so for today's webinar, we will be covering on four main areas. We will be covering first of all the role of a QS. Alright, when you do measurements, how you report your items. Then we'll move on to drawing and document management, and then we'll move on lastly to collaboration. Alright, okay, so the first things first, I have a simple PDF here. Bluebeam can load in both scan and clear PDF. Okay, you can scale both, you can measure both, no issue. Now, one of the new features that came with Revu 2019 is not the ability to scale, we all know that, but there is a requirement to scale now. Okay, so if you do not scale your drawing beforehand, you cannot measure. Alright, Bluebeam will stop you from measuring. Okay, now let's move on to the actual measurement. Now, anyone who has used freeware online PDF software, you will know that this is very commonly what you see, a typical red color outline with a measurement there. Alright, Bluebeam can do that very easily. But what we hope to achieve with Bluebeam is something like this. Okay, now, so what I've just done is I have taken out a measurement from my tool chest. So what is a tool chest? Tool chest is a library that stores your custom markups. Alright, so whether it's a measurement, whether it's a comment, whether it's a cloud, whatsoever, right, it stores all these things. Now, what is the purpose? So some of the QS you all may know, when you give the same piece of work to different people for them to do, right, they will usually use their own favorite colors. Someone who prefers blue will use more blue. Someone who prefers pink will use more pink or use more red. At the end of the day, the quantities that you receive are likely to be the same, but the colors is different. So sometimes when you have a big team, anything more than two, when they report to you, you have problems trying to figure out, oh, this color is this color is that. So there is always a need for standardization across the whole team. So the tool chest really helps because it allows you to create a particular library, a certain color naming convention, right? And one of these takes less than about 20 seconds to do, right? And after that, you can just apply it across the whole team, and then you can just standardize these items. Very quick to do, very easy to do, very efficient. Now, so if you have simple measurements, you can do them like that. A few options you can do really. So you can set different things. I won't cover on hash patterns, but let's say if I want to show different items. Okay, so let's say for example, other than ceramic tiles, if I want to show additional items such as depth, volume, wall area, I can set all these things as well. Okay, all these things are available. Okay, provided you have the space to show them. Now, if you have simple curves, you can perform them as well. So let's say for example, if I have this island over here that I need to measure off. Okay, I can just measure off like this and then convert the arcs one by one like this. Okay, that is also possible. Now, at the end of the day, when I finished up all these measurements, where do they go? Right, they go into a list below. This is called the markups list. Okay, so it functions similarly to Excel. Okay, in the sense that you see it stores everything: width, length, area, wall area. All these things are fully customizable. You can rename them. You can add formulas to them, a times b equals c, or whichever other purpose that you want. You can arrange them ascending, descending. You can hide, unhide all these things before you decide to export to a PDF summary or before you export to a Excel summary. So this is very flexible. But the more important part of markups list is that it stores everything that you do. So you will never miss out on anything. Right, so what do I mean by that? So let's say for example, I place a simple pen mark at this little corner here. Okay, it's so small. Okay, but if you take a look, Bluebeam has detected it. So it's very clear. It will track everything that you do. You will not miss anything.
Just now, I actually covered a simple point about measuring a simple curve. All right. Now, if you happen to have a exceptionally curved shape, okay, something like this, okay, those who are using 2018 or later, you will have this feature. Okay, this feature is what you call the dynamic fill. Okay, what this feature is meant to do is if you have very odd shapes that you really can't just convert to arc, right? It'll be very tedious, right? This is meant to help you color the entire shape. And once you identify the measurement, so let's say identify and apply, then the measurement is done from there. Okay, so if you have any curve shapes, this will come in very handy for that. Okay, so this is available in 2018 and later. Okay, now, okay, so let's move on to the next part. One of the common questions that always pop up is what happens if I have different types of measurements, whether I'm doing structural, archi. So the common questions that people ask is that, is Bluebeam an archi software? Is Bluebeam a structural software? Or is Bluebeam an MA software? Okay, to be fair, Bluebeam is none. Okay, so what Bluebeam does is that it does everything in a very generic way. Okay, for example, if you measure area on an archi floor plan, that is your floor area. Okay, if you apply a height to it, that becomes your wall area, that becomes your wall finishes. All right, same thing goes for structural. So it depends on how I name it. Okay, so let's say for example, if I'm doing, I created a library called a SLAB 225 thing. So if I were to measure this and I set a certain formula, I can just apply all these items. Okay, and once I've done them, okay, if you check out the markups list, right, I have renamed it myself. See, I changed the column name to formwork. Right, so instead of wall area, it shows as formwork. Right, so it's really about how you tweak the formula. Okay, how you rename the item. Right, so with this, if you are someone who's measuring more on archi, you can name them to suit a more archi based kind of measurement. If you're doing more structural, then as you go along. If you're doing MA, then also as you go along for that. Okay, okay, so that covers the other types of measurements. Now let's go into what you call counting. Okay, now, so if you press Ctrl F or you go to this little icon here, you will know that Bluebeam can do text search. Text search I will cover later. right? But one of the main things about Bluebeam is that you can actually do a visual search. So let's say, for example, if I search for that particular item, right? So it treats it as a legend. It searches through the entire drawing, okay? Or it can search through entire drawing sets as well. Okay, that is possible. Okay, so once done, okay, you can see the results here. So as I click on each one, you can see on the right hand side what is being measured. Okay, so this is almost like your checking process, right? So once I select all, I can actually apply and measure off together at one shot. Okay, so at this stage, if you take a look, I have an item here that tells me how many do I have. So let's say I open up my count item, 38 number. Okay, so if now this will work obviously the best if you get drawings from the designer that have layers, right? If your drawings from designer have layers, then you will do this a lot faster, right? Now something useful which you can try is that you can add a space. Okay, so let's say for example, if I split into tower A and I split this portion into tower B, I split this into tower C. Okay, so once I have that, what you see is that it has segregated for me 16 number in tower A, 4 number in tower B, 18 number in tower C. Right, so this can be potentially useful for you if you happen to need to segregate your measurements, right? Because sometimes your work may be segregated by towers, can be segregated by blocks, or can be segregated by phases as well, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Right, so these are some useful tips you can do. Right, now this applies whether you are a measurement person or whether you're an engineer, right? You will need to segregate either way. Okay, so at this point I have covered the basic measurements already, right? So let me cover one additional item before I open up for questions. One of the other common questions that happen with any software is that what happens if you have multiple scales on the PDF? Okay, so what you can see here is that I already have this portion over here that have a measurement done, right? And this page, I have 3 different scales, okay? So with Bluebeam, you can actually add a separate scale to each item. So I can set here, and set over here, say 1:50, section A, apply. Okay, once done, I can just come over here and scale this. So let's say, for example, if I come to this item, calibrate, I can scale this separately. 7, apply. Right, so what you have here is that I have 2 separate items. I have 1:30 here, as 1:50, right? All happening on the same piece of PDF. Okay, so this portion, right, is 1.85, and that was in a 1:30 scale. Right, if I drag this over, it should change, and it does. Okay, so it changes to 5.14. Right, so this hopefully will address any issue because in our industry we always get drawings with different scales, definitely. Okay, so with this, you can actually apply separate scales on each area of the drawing. All right, then after that you can save it and then you can use it for future use. Okay. So with this, I have come to the first part section that is done. I've covered basic measurement. What I'm moving on to next will be how you export your items. All right, but before that, I will open up for any questions. All right. Okay. So as you may understand, this is something that applies to any 2D software because as you may know, rebar most of the time on drawings is not fully drawn, right? So when it's not fully drawn, there is not enough info for you to measure off a certain distance, right? So in that sense, if you have only a 2D base, you have some restrictions if you want to do measurements. Okay. That being said, we do have certain structural clients which what they do is that they input rebar ratios into their custom columns in Bluebeam. They apply the formula for the rebar ratios, and then they get their quantities from there. Right, so that could be one aspect, right, for you to consider. Alternatively, some of them transfer their length measurements into Excel from Bluebeam, right, which I will cover later on. Okay, so yes, as mentioned, what I've covered so far, those are basic in terms of measurements. Okay, now let's talk about how do you want to export your items. Okay, so if you want to export your items, the first way that most people do is what you call a CSV summary. Right, so to put it simply, a CSV summary is just export to Excel, simple. Okay, so if you have so if you export over to Excel, this is exactly what you see. right? So if you take a look at the structure of this, it's basically a carbon copy of what you have over here. Okay, so it's basically a copy of the markups list and pasted into Excel. Right? Once it goes over to Excel, whatever you want to do with the number there, it's up to you. There's no linkage already. Right? That being said, if you are someone who transfer the data very often, right, you may want to rearrange your items first. Arrange your data. Some columns if you don't need, some items if you don't need, hide it away. Right? Either hide it away as a layer, turn it off, right, before you export over to Excel. You can do those things before you do the transfer to Excel. Right? The next thing which we will encourage you to do is what you call a PDF summary. Okay, so now a PDF summary looks like this. So when the summary is created, okay, you actually have this page at the back, right, which shows you the item and the relevant details that you have included. Now, the important thing about this is that we feel PDF summary is useful for both internal and external checking. Because internally, you may need to send a report to your manager, say, hey, this is what I measured, so on and so forth. Externally, you may need to send the measurement, let's say, to the consultant to say that, hey, this is what I'm claiming for. Or you may want to send to a subcon, say that, hi, this is your scope of work for this project, please confirm. This is also the amount that we measured. Please double check. Right? Those are the very usual communications that we have with any project client. Now, the first key point about this is that it's a PDF. So that means anybody can open this file, right? So the next thing also, so if let's say for example I'm a subcon or I'm a consultant, I take a look at this item, it's a bit too small, I click, it will jump me back to the original drawing. That is what you call a hyperlinking function. Okay, so if you send to a client, even if the client doesn't have Bluebeam, the hyperlinking function still works. Right, so that's what makes it useful for both internal and external reporting. Okay, so that's that. Okay, now the next one which I'm going to cover is what you call the Excel link. Okay, so for those who have installed the trial already, you would know that there is a quantity link installed on your computer. Okay, so what's going to happen is that, let's say, for example, if I transfer this drawing over. Okay, I transfer the drawing over. I say that, okay, I want the area of my ceramic tiles to come over. Okay, 16 jumps over. Okay, so this is my ceramic. Okay, then if I do a simple formula, let's say $15 equals this multiplied by this, it gives me this final item. Okay, so what you have over here is that it is a lifelink item. So let's say, for example, if I come over here, 16.78, right? So if I have to deduct certain spaces, so let's say I deduct this space, it drops to 13.5, goes back, updates as well, 13.5. Right? So what this feature is meant to do is to have that link between your PDF and your Excel sheet. Okay? So where this could be useful is that some QSs will have a very well created sort of Excel format. Okay, with all your preset formulas and everything. So usually what you do is that you measure on drawings, you just transfer the number and that's it, right? So another way you can explore is that you can set up these links beforehand. Okay, set up the links beforehand and then let it transfer over, right? So what I'm trying to say is that if you use this as a template, then this can be useful. Okay, meaning because if you see, when I save all these items, all these names that I have over here, they reflect the same exact name that I have in Bluebeam, right? So you can sort of set up like a template library that links over to Excel, right? So you can set everything to auto-populate. So when you have a new drawing coming in that has ceramic tiles, that have other tiles, you will just update as you go along. Okay, so that is an overview of the 3 different types of how you can export. Obviously, the other way you can export is to print paper, but we don't recommend it, right? You save the. Okay. So that is for the portion of exporting your measurements, right? And that will conclude for the measurement portion, right? The next one I'm going to move in is more into document management, day-to-day functions, right? Anyone has questions regarding this second portion of exporting your items?
This also linked to a certain revision of a drawing?
You can set it so, yes. So when you transfer over here, there is something what you call a source file. Okay, so for example, this could be the old drawing, right? I could remove this old drawing, and it's back to an empty template, and I can also load in the new drawing inside. Right? So if you have a new drawing and it's revision 1 or whatever, you load it in, it will populate again from there. So it is based on some reference files. And you not only can only add one file, you can add in multiple files as well if you wish to do so.
So the markups get carried over then from one revision to the next, or that's not automatic?
Okay, inside Bluebeam, there is a feature called batch slip sheet, which you can see here, slip sheet. If you use the slip sheet function, right, it can identify your measurements and transfer over, but that takes a process, okay? If you want to skip that process, the quick way is that you can actually copy paste markups, right? You can actually copy paste whatever that you measure here and copy paste it over to the new drawing. So your base can be transferred over, then you can adjust from there, right? The simple idea is that your drawing is a base, your markups is another layer on top. So if you have a new drawing, you can just have the new drawing here, transfer the markups over, paste on top.
Oh, and then you look for the differences or whatever. Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so what I'm going to move on to is what you call generic functions, right? Functions that whether you're a QS, whether engineer or consultant, you are likely going to use, right? So we usually like to term them document management, drawing management, right? Now, the first things I want to cover is how do you, so based on what Paula mentioned just now, compare drawings, okay? So Bluebeam has two types of comparison. First is overlay, okay? So the first type of overlay allows you to search via color. Okay, so what you see over here is that if I zoom in, you will see that each drawing has a certain color to it. So each drawing has a certain layer and color. So you can compare and contrast. What is the difference? When I compare B versus C, what has changed? When I compare C versus A, what has changed? Right, so that is overlay. Okay, you can also choose to overlay multiple drawings. Okay, if you have, for example, if you have more than 5, more than 6, you can just increase as you go along, provided your eyesight is good. Okay. Now the other one that you can try is what you call the compare function, right? So compare functions is a bit more strict, right? Compare function only allows you 2 drawings, right? And the method of comparing is different. So if I zoom in, the right side synchronizes together as well, okay? And you can see it won't display by color, but it will display by a cloud. Right, and you also notice that the screen splits into 2. Okay, so this is just some additional info. Bluebeam can split screen up to 16 times. Okay, but to be honest, if you want to split 16 times and still view your drawing, I would recommend you to get an LCD TV. Okay, that being said, speaking of dual monitors, it'll be good to know that Bluebeam can actually spread your screen over to the other monitor. Right, you don't need to drag this, right? So you don't need to drag this window over. You can actually open multiple instances of Bluebeam, meaning I can open 2, 3 Bluebeam, then just transfer over to the monitor, right? You need not drag a tab over, right? So that's just some additional information. Okay, so now let's move on. I have covered more of what you call standard 2 items, your compare and overlay. Okay, so now let's cover some of the additional issues they may encounter. Okay, so now what you see here, right? This is a civil project, one of the traffic stages. Okay, so this drawing was actually given to us by one of our existing users. Right, they were working on the civil rail project. Okay, so now the first things I want to highlight is that this drawing is actually not one whole piece by itself. Okay, it is made of individual snapshots. Okay, for those who have been working on civil projects, you will know that civil projects tend to be very large, and whenever they give you drawings, they usually give it to you in part plans. So if you have a huge traffic plan, they usually give it to you in 12 parts, and they are all segregated into 12 different areas, right? So what some of our clients used to do is that they used to print out 12 pages of the drawing in paper form, put it on the floor, and then stitch everything together by hand, right? Now, so what this client of us did, they did the same thing, just that in Bluebeam. Okay, so how did they do it? You may know that in Windows, in Windows computers, there is a feature called snipping tool. Okay, so Bluebeam has an inbuilt snipping tool as well. It's called snapshot. Okay, so essentially what they did was they snapshot each individual portion that you see here, and then they stitch it out together to form this entire PDF. Right, so that's just some background what they have. Right. Okay, so what is the issue that they face? Okay, so when they try to overlay these two sets, okay, I mean, the first thing is that they didn't flatten, right? So you have to flatten first, right? The first issue that they have is that when they try to overlay these two, right, they didn't check the position properly. Okay, so when it was done, it looked like this. Okay, so obviously you can see from here, the issue here is that there are some movement changes that you need to address. Okay, so if you have movement changes that you need to address, you will do what you call a aligning of points. Okay, so simply put is that you align 3 points on each drawing. Okay, so let's say for example, if I just set 1, 2, 3 here. Okay, and then it will go to the second drawing. Okay, so when I move to the second drawing, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and once done, you click OK. Right, so after you have aligned your drawing, this applies the same way whether you have a position change or whether you have a size change. Right, a size change usually happens when you try to overlay a part plan and overlay a large plan. Okay, if you want to adjust the rotation, that can be done as well. So like overlay a side plan and a topo plan, the idea is the same. Right, so you can see here the result is much better. Okay, so that concludes for the compare and overlay portion. Okay, so let's move on to the next feature. Now, so in terms of functionalities that we can do here, okay, I want to cover this portion here. Okay, so first things first is that, just some background. This is a 4-page PDF, okay? And first things first, you'll notice this is a scanned PDF, okay? So the first thing that you have is OCR. Okay, so OCR is a feature that allows you to search through the drawing, okay, and recognize the text, right? So that is very important because once you recognize the text, you can use it to do many other things from there. All right. So the first issue that I have with drawings, right? So let's say for example, if you get a large set of drawings, you get 70 pages, 80 pages, 100 pages. Okay. So you need to understand this 80 pages is something that you're going to use for a very long time. Like throughout your tender, throughout your project, you're going to use this for a long time, right? So for me as a consultant, whenever I need to find drawings, I need to know the name fast, right? So if I have 80 pieces of drawings, I need to know where's the elevation one quickly. I need to know where's the section one quickly and fast, right? So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use what you call a page labeling method, right, to actually search through the drawing and rename the drawing. So what you see here is that I have some data here. I can select this. I can use this to apply and rename. So if you look on the left-hand side, all has been renamed: first floor layout, second floor layout, third roof. Okay, so this really helps me in the future because once I save it, I have the names there. Okay, and as I go along with my project, I can find my drawings much faster. Okay, so now what you see here is that this is a very typical. This is a contract document. Okay, from one of my older projects. Okay, so what you can see here is that this is easily a 1,200 page document, right? And it's a document I need to work with for the next 9 months. Okay, so for me as a consultant, whenever the contractor comes in and sends in a claim and everything, I need references quickly. Okay, so you can see what I've just done. I've already renamed all the pages quickly, right? I have come across some users who tell me they do this manually. Okay, so after this, please do not do this manually. Okay, run your OCR, use the page labeling feature and rename all these things. So for me, whenever the page reference comes out, I can look for it very quickly, right? So I can look for it either under thumbnails or I can look for it under bookmarks as well. So you can see under bookmarks, it has already split for me all the individual pages as well, right? So if you have them from your Word document and you transfer over to PDF using the Bluebeam create PDF function, it can also track all these individual pointers. Okay, so something like a content page, content sheet. Okay, so you have to imagine this is something that will stick with you for the rest of your project, right? So it's something that you do once and then it will just benefit you for the rest of the time. Okay, so that's one example that I wanted to share. Okay, so allow me to just go through one more before I open up for questions. Okay, so at this point, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a feature called batch link. Okay, let me run this first. Batch link. Wait. Okay, so now once that is done, if you take a look, right, those drawings that are available in this drawing set they have found. Okay, so even essentially what I just did was I searched for each page number. And when I find each page number, I will tell the software, wherever else in the drawing you find this page number, create a link. If you find it appearing in your specs, create a link. If you find it appearing in your detail sheet, create a link. So in the end, what happens is that when I click the first floor plan, it jumps, right? So if I zoom over here, I click the sheet 12, it jumps as well. If I click under details, it jumps accordingly, right? So essentially what it is trying to do is that when you work on your drawing, so let's say for example, if I have a drawing here, I click, it jumps again, right? So this can be potentially used when you're in the project phase. When you have a set of prepared drawings already, you may want to run this batch link so that as you go along, if you need to go to certain pages very quickly, then you can use this feature, batch link. Okay, so I'll stop here if any questions. So what I've just covered, those are some very quick features that take less than maybe in total, including OCR, take less than 5 minutes per drawing set, right? But it's those features that you do once and you work for the rest of your project, right? Basically renaming your drawings and linking them up much faster. Okay, so what I'm going to cover next is I'm going to cover markups and some of the other collaboration features. Right? Any questions before I continue?
If you work on SharePoint, would then those links, would it still work through the SharePoint as well, or is that a bit difficult?
You mean hyperlinks or batch link?
Well, nowadays we work, we put all the stuff on SharePoint, so it's on the cloud. And then and then all the tender documents get uploaded on the cloud on the SharePoint. If you open the drawings there, would it still work, or is it better to have it on your hard drive?
Okay, so first things first, Bluebeam has a integration with SharePoint, so you can actually integrate them together. That's number one. Number two, in terms of hyperlinks, okay, so I have not really covered hyperlinks. So far, this is batch link. So when if you notice what I've just done is I have a 60 over page drawing set, and that batch link actually links within the set. Okay, so as long as I have the 60 page set together, whether it's on SharePoint or any place else, the link still works. Okay, so that's the first question. The second question is if the 60 pages were to be separate in other spaces. Okay, so let's say for example I have my first floor plan in SharePoint. I have another floor plan in another different location, maybe in Bluebeam itself, on another server. If you have that, you can't use batch link. You have to do a manual hyperlink. Yeah, so the linking still works, but it's tedious, right? So I would definitely recommend you to do the initial link in a full drawing set first. That obviously brings about the best benefits, right? You do the link in one full drawing set, then you share the drawing set wherever you want, because the hyperlinks work internally already. Tia Singh has a question. Thumbnails and bookmarks can be applied to scan copy as well. Answer is yes. So which is why I emphasized just now, I was using the OCR function, right? So anyone who have used OCR function in Bluebeam is pretty strong, the OCR function. So if you have a scan copy, right, run your OCR, search through, right? I mean, as a fellow user and person in the industry, I cannot guarantee you 100%. Okay, because it depends on what kind of scan copy you get also. If you get a rubbish scan copy, you don't expect Bluebeam to do magic also. Okay, but that being said, Bluebeam's OCR is pretty strong. Okay, so yes, I hope that answers the question. Now let's move to markups. Okay, so within the idea of markups, this will cover more from the role of an engineer, from the role of a project manager. All right, QSs maybe or maybe not, you need to use here and there, right? Okay, so in terms of markups, these are the different types of markups that you have. Okay, I will not, for the sake of time, I will not go through every single one. Right? If you have any specific questions as to what each of them does, you can let me know. Okay, so this is a call out. Okay, if I want to add a leader line, I can just set another leader line. Okay, that's a markup. Okay, if I have pen, highlight, eraser, I think that's pretty straightforward. Dimension. Okay, dimension. Something useful would be something called Cloud Plus. So Cloud Plus, let's say for example, if I set this space and I apply this, right? So it's essentially a Cloud plus a call. That's a Cloud Plus. Okay. You also have images to add in. So let's say for example, if I put in an image file. Okay, so let's say I set this, drag the image. Okay, that's an image. Okay. Something which I want to mention is called a flag function. Okay, now this flag function is useful as a to-do list kind of thing, right? So why do I say that? So let's say for example, if I set a flag, okay, so let's say I come over here and I do a flag. And I click here and say reminder. Okay, let's zoom in. Oops. Okay, reminder to submit claims. Okay, then maybe I go to some other page below, right? Then there's another flag. Okay, reminder to clear views. Okay, for example. Okay, so the idea of this is that for any professional in our industry, you have tons of things to do. Okay, and you usually have more than one project to juggle. Okay, so when you work with a drawing set, there may be sometimes where you need reminders on what to do. Okay, so what you see here is that on the right side, I have a bunch of pages. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. On the left, I have flags. So when I click on each flag, it will jump to that drawing as I go along. Okay, so for me, this functions like a sticky notes, like a reminder to do something, right? So when I click, I remember, oh, okay, I need to remember to submit claims for this. So that helps me as I go along. Okay, so once I'm done, I can just choose to delete away the flag, just to mark it as done, right? So that's something that you guys may want to try out. Okay, okay. So whatever that you're doing here, it covers many different things. Okay, so in terms of markups, all these are basic markups here and there, right? You will be good to know that you can set your own markups as well. Okay, so like the same way how a QS can color their own measurements, any person doing markups, engineers can set their own colors. Okay, so in a collaborative environment, each person will have different colors so that when I measure each different things, people understand what it is. Okay, so that's how we go along. There's something with QA/QC as well, right? So I want to cover on QA/QC. So now a very important, because for me, I have gone through defect management walks before, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the time what happens is that you will have a defect management checklist where you can take down, take photos, then everything is usually written on hand, right? And later on, someone has to come up with the meetings or minute. Okay. So what I do suggest, if you're using Bluebeam, is that if you see on the left here, this is something like a default checklist that I have already. Okay. And for those using iPad, okay, Bluebeam is supported on iPad, so you can potentially bring your iPad to site as well. Okay. So let's say for example, if you're working through, whether you're a PM or whether you're a consultant, all right, the person says, okay, there's an issue here, you place it here, clean ceiling grid. Right, then there's an issue here, you place it here. Right, so you notice at the same time, you are not cluttering the drawing. That's number one. Number two, you are digitizing your workflow. And number three, everything is saved below here. Okay, so if I take a look at my comments bar, you see, my clean ceiling grid here is here, speaker cover is here. So in the end, you can generate what you call the PDF summary, which I've shown you just now. Right, so in the end, it has timestamps as well. Okay, so you can, if you want to add in certain dates, you can add in creation date. Let's say I turn it on. You can also have a timestamp when you actually did the item, when you actually key in the item, right? And as you go along, in a collaborative state, you can also come in here and say, okay, I will respond and say that this is rejected. So I can set certain timestamps as well, right? I will cover more on this later when I go over to collaboration. Okay, so that is more for the markups point of view, right? So I hope that addresses for the engineers. Okay. So at this point, I want to cover a little bit on how we settle our progress claims. Okay, so just now I covered on defects. Now let's cover a bit on progress claims. Okay, now So if you take a look at this drawing, okay, so for me, in my experience as a consultant, I have met two different types of contractors. Okay, version one, what they will do is that they will give me this piece of drawing, and then they will give me 4 photos, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, then afterwards, I eventually have to go down to the site and see for myself, because 4 pictures to explain a huge site, that's barely enough. Okay, so that's version one. Version 2 contractor will take a lot of photos, but they don't mark it up very well. They will take a lot of photos, they will copy and paste into PowerPoint, save it as PDF, and then send it to me. But the problem with that is that they don't identify the locations well enough. Okay, so those are two extremes. Okay, so if you take a look, how can you potentially do defects tracking and also potentially progress claims in Bluebeam? So if you take a look as a PDF, I have just shown you, you can add in images. That's a good thing, obviously, right? But you have to imagine how many pictures can you put in a PDF before it gets completely cluttered. On this piece of drawing, I can probably add in another 10 more, then it starts to get very messy. Okay, now, so there is a feature within Bluebeam that is called capture. Okay, so if I open up this capture function, okay, it can load in multiple photos. Okay, and if you're on your iPad, you can load in videos as well. Okay, so now you see, once that's done, I have this small little icon here. So when I click this icon, right, the pictures that I have placed in, they are in here, one by one attached over here. Right, and they are all saved in this small little icon here. Okay, and another plus point about this is that number one, it doesn't take up space. Number two is that it is geo-tagged to that item already. So I know that it's coming from the staircase, right? So that saves a lot of time as well. Okay, so one of the common questions that will come back to me is that does the user need to have Bluebeam? Okay, yes and no. Okay, if the user that you're sending to does not have Bluebeam, okay, does have Bluebeam, sorry. If your user has Bluebeam, you can send them this file straight. They can see this icon. Okay. If they don't have Bluebeam, you can create this summary for them and show them the actual photos as a report. Okay. So this is something that we are encouraging for them to use on projects. Okay. Now, so at this point, just let me share so-called a case study. Okay, so this is something that I use as a case study very often. Okay, we are doing this on our own projects as well. Okay, so wait. Okay, for those who have seen me before, this is me. Okay, just to prove to you that this is me. Okay, that's me. Okay, anyway, some background about this project. Okay, this project started actually in 2015. Okay, 2015. Okay, I know the date says 2017, but it started in 2015. So this client approached us because the contractor ran away. Okay, so my job was to actually go into the site and see how much work has been done. So I'm supposed to generate an assessment report and report to the owner, says that, oh, contractor has done 60%, so that the owner can claim for the remaining 40% via a lawsuit. Okay, so that was my job. So what happened in 2015 was I brought a camcorder and just walked the site. Okay, so it's 3 stories. I just brought my camcorder, walked through the entire site, finished, done, went back to the office. Okay, in the end, what happened was when I came back, there are a few issues. Okay, number one is that I can't remember where I walked. Okay, because to be honest, none of the finishes have been up that much. I can't tell which bedroom is whose. Okay, whether it's person A's bedroom, person B's bedroom, I can't really tell, right? And the next thing is that the lawyer didn't accept the video evidence, right? They needed photos. Okay, so that was a mistake on my end. Okay, so in the end, what happened was I had to go back a few more Saturdays just to take photos. Okay, so any one of you, whether you're an engineer, whether a QS, if you have done this before, you know the pain. Okay, for me, this is only a 3-story building. Okay, for you guys, if you have even bigger projects, this is an even bigger problem. Okay, so what happened when I went back is that I went back. Taking photos is not really the problem. Taking photos is fast. But the problem is that when you go back to office, you have to rearrange the photos. You have to figure out these 6 belong to this room, these 5 belong to this room, these 4 belong to... So that takes a lot of time. So I spent quite a bit of time before I can even start doing my professional work, you see? Right. So anyway, in the end, the report was done, sent, settled, finished. Okay, settled. In 2017, the same issue came up. Okay, another contractor, separate contractor ran away. Okay, so we were brought in to do the same thing again. Okay, so at that time, we tried to explore more of Bluebeam. Okay, and at that time, there are more people using Bluebeam already, but still QS. Not many people have actually explored this particular function. So this function is what you call a Bluebeam Studio, which I will cover later. Okay, so Bluebeam Studio, what happened is that it supports drawings on a cloud-based system. So I actually brought my iPad along. I loaded the drawing onto the iPad, and as I started walking each different portion, I started taking photos. Okay, so if you take a look, so let's say for example, if I walk to this particular space near this existing altar, right, I will take a cloud and I will take the photos. Right, so as you can see, I can take multiple photos to attach within one individual space. Okay, so I will I will just continue doing that as I go along for the rest of the project. So at the end, once I finish taking the photos, when I go back to office, I created a report that is the same way as created this, same exact thing. Okay, the same way as I did. Okay, so once I created that report, if you catch what I'm trying to say so far, this thing will save me time twice. Number one is that my photos are tracked. Okay, meaning I know where the photos come from. So that saves me time if I want to arrange a photo. I don't need to arrange the photos anymore. Number two, this report comes as standard already. Right? So you can imagine, for me as a personal point of view, how much time it saves me compared to when I use the camcorder function. Okay, so whether you're an existing user of Bluebeam or whether you are a potential new user, right? I encourage you to try this out. Okay, especially when you're on site. Okay, no matter who is the one taking photos, whether you as a QS you're the one going down to take photos, or whether you are an engineer who is tasked to take photos, please do use this function. Okay, we do have a few clients who are exploring this feature for defects tracking. Okay, so they are trying that out as well. Okay, so that is just a simple case study which I want to share. So we have come to the last portion of the sharing. Okay, it's called Studio, right? So I have showed to you a little bit just now. Okay, but the how I use Studio just now was I use it for myself, meaning I just use it internally. It is my iPad, it's my computer. That's it. Okay, but what Studio is meant to do is really to allow for collaboration across everyone. Okay, so if you take a look, what have we covered so far, right? So for by virtue of using PDF, number one is that you obviously can create reports, whatever that you mark up on the PDF. Okay, if you have measurements, if you have comments, you can just copy paste them onto a main file. Okay, you don't have to transfer data between JPEG, PDF. You can all work within PDF. Okay, so those are some of the benefits. Now, what are some of the problems that you work with PDFs? Okay, so I think this applies to anybody working with PDFs. Okay, if you take a look, any one of you who have done site meetings before, okay, there usually will be 101 things that they discuss, and 101 things that they say to do and finish. The architect usually will come up with meetings on minutes, a lot of to do, and then a lot of the to do is done later. All right, but there is always the issue. What happens if someone is not around in the meeting? He always has to look at the minutes of meeting. There's nothing to reference from. Okay, so if you take a look, what are the trade-offs that you use? Okay, so what happens when you review and mark up multiple copies? So let's say, for example, if I'm an engineer, okay, I come in on Monday, I talk to the client, he says, okay, please change this, please change this, please change this. Okay, I know. But I keep the drawing to myself. Then I go on leave. Then later someone else comes on Thursday to replace me, and then the client says the same thing but different version. Right? So at the end of the week, what's going to happen is that we are going to have two sets of changes. And on the site, you will know that it's not good to have too many versions. Right? And sometimes you don't even know who is tracking, who has said what and when. Right? So those are some of the trade-offs working on a PDF platform. Okay? So now, Bluebeam Studio aims to get rid of all those things. Right? So whatever that you see here, okay, is that Bluebeam aims to bring all of these people together on the same platform. Whether you're a design person, project person, or construction team, it's meant to have everything one together. Okay, so let's say, for example, engineers working with themselves, they have Excel. Then, for example, for construction team, you use documents, PDFs. So at the end of the day, you have different sets of items. So eventually you're going to end up with meetings, phone calls, a lot of emails, and eventually you come up with a lot of fragmented discussions. Okay, and of course you all know this. Okay, you guys know this better than me. Okay, so those are the things that can go wrong. Okay, so what does Studio aim to give you? Okay, it aims to use a PDF as a platform to let everyone talk together. Okay, now, so let me bring into Studio now. Okay, so Bluebeam Studio Sessions is basically a cloud-based kind of platform. Okay, that allows everyone to collaborate at the same time. Okay, so how does this work? So if I open up a cloud system, a cloud meeting, I can invite a maximum of 500 people. Right? So let's say, for example, if I'm a contractor, I want the client to come in, I want the subcon to come in, I want the contractor to come in. I can just invite them in a system, in a cloud system. Okay, they can log in from home, they can log in from office, they can log in from site, whatsoever. Okay, they can log in, and then everyone can be discussing and marking up on the same piece of PDF. Now, that is the main point. Okay, because I don't think any other platform allows that, right? In terms of the PDF, everybody can mark up on the same piece of PDF in real time. Okay, so this is really to improve the site management, right? So whenever someone needs to discuss something, they will make it very clear. If you want to discuss something, please discuss on the meeting in Bluebeam Studio. Okay, so that is Bluebeam Studio, right? In a nutshell. Okay, so let me log into my system. I'll just show you how it works. Okay, so one of the things to take note, Studio is free. Okay, there was a time where they charge in terms of the they charge you a pricing for the amount of space that you use on the cloud, but now it has been made completely free. Okay, so the first things that you see, right, there are two icons. On the left, it's got projects. On the right, it's got sessions. Okay, so what I shared just now is called sessions. Okay, now what I'm going to show is called projects. Okay, so what's the difference basically? Projects, it works similar. Okay, it works similarly to SharePoint a little bit. It can be compared to Dropbox, can be compared to Google Drive. Basically, it works as a document server. Okay, so the background of this is that for those, if you're involved, you may know, we have a client that is working with Mandai Rainforest right now for one of the development projects. Okay, so one of the challenges that they face is that the client always needs to have daily meetings, and with every meeting they need to have updates. They want to comment quickly, and they want changes to be done very quickly, right? So that's why this project team, they exploit using Bluebeam Studio. Okay, so what I've created here is called a studio project. Okay, so in a studio project, it's very strict. Studio project only allows one person to mark up the drawing. Very clear. So if I want to use a drawing, if I want to open up a drawing and one engineer has taken it out, the second engineer cannot take out anymore. That's very clear. Okay, so that is studio project. So this is actually a client-facing platform where if the client goes in and it says, okay, I want to mark on a few drawings, they'll click on this, open, then it will just open from the next set drawing. So let's say, for example, if I click on this, it jumps. So this portion, okay, it jumps to the first. So it's almost like a hyperlinking system. So as the client goes along, they can mark up, and everything is saved on cloud, right? Everything they're doing now is on cloud already. Okay, so this is the kind of platform which they brought the client in. So they invite the client in to collaborate and say that, okay, any RFI that we have, we will post it here. So please reply there in real time. Okay, so that is what they got the client to do. Okay, now, so what else? When you move into a discussion system, so what I shared just now was that only one person can open the PDF, right? Okay, now what if I want everybody to mark up on the same PDF? Bring everyone into discussion. This is what I have. Okay, so you have some people, you can load in different people inside here. Okay, so if you have 500 people, go ahead to add in. Okay, drawings you can add in. So from what you can see here, you have different sets of comments, different colors, obviously. So if I open up the list here, I can see who has done what. Okay, I have done this, this person has done this person has done this, when, what time, rejected. So this feels like an actual meeting already. So back in the States where they use this very often because you must understand, it's not like Singapore. Singapore maximum from Pasir Ris to Jurong, you travel 2 hours, you should reach already. But when you work in the States, sometimes traveling to a site meeting It's not a 2-hour drive. It can be a 2-hour flight. So they really need a lot of real-time online collaboration. So sometimes these meetings, right? Some people may even be logging in from the separate offices in different places, right? Even from your overseas office also you can. Okay, but the whole idea with this is that it allows you to have real-time collaboration. So multiple people online, multiple people commenting at the same time, and the important thing about this whole thing is tracking. Is tracking. Really, that is really the main key issue, because whatever that happens on site always needs to be tracked. All right. So sometimes when the contractor sends you a picture, say that, hi, this is a WhatsApp picture. Do we proceed? So sometimes you will just say proceed, right? But what if something goes wrong? Okay, so there always needs to be two things. There always needs to be tracking, and there always needs to be accountability on the site, right? So I feel that most things that are done on site right now, they are done on WhatsApp. Okay, WhatsApp is fine, but when something goes wrong, that's difficult, right? So that's why we encourage this studio function, because you can look anybody in, seriously. You want to pull in your supplier in to leave a comment, also can. And they don't need a license. If they are just coming in just to view only, they don't even need the license. Okay, so at the end of the day, once all this is done and you track your items, set status and everything, then you can always come up with a report. Okay, so if I have a report set up here, now this is the part where people start to get accountable. Okay, they will show you whoever has done what, who is in the meeting, what drawings do you use, and then what do you say, what time, on what drawing. Okay, so this really covers the accountability part, right? You will never ever have to refer to a WhatsApp message and say that, hey, you said you would do it, right? What if that person deletes the message? Then that's gone. Okay, yeah. So this really aims to cover the accountability portion. Okay, so on this note, okay, this feature really depends on it is used differently depending on who you are. If you are a QS person, you may not be directly using this feature very much. You may be communicating with your site engineer as he takes the photos for you in real time, maybe. Okay, you may be the ones going down to take the photo yourself on this. Okay, and if you are an engineer or you're a site person, you may be the ones commenting in real time, right? So as you can see, different colors, different persons, and so on and so forth, right? So that is Bluebeam Studio. Okay, so with that, I have come to the end of my presentation. Yes, please do note there are other smaller features which we will not cover. Those as you ask questions, we can discuss, right? But as an overall view, that is for the presentation. Any questions that you guys may have?
Thank you for Aaron's demonstration. Anyone who would like to raise any question, you can, if you want, you can just unmute and speak directly. I want to keep it short and sweet so that we can end the session on time. Anyone?
Hello, this is Teo.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'm the person who asked you a question whether this Bluebeam can perform the rebar measurements, right? Can you show us an example?
Okay, I think for rebar, maybe permit me to answer for Aaron. Rebar require a fair bit of formula in your Excel. As you know, I think Aaron mentioned that the rebar detail drawing is not detailed. A lot of time it comes in a table form, right? If you have a table form, it says the description of the rebar size and the rebar number perhaps. So different QSs have different tabulation, but if you were to be able to measure them, you are measuring them basically by linear and by number. And the rest of it will calculate by Excel. For example, the band is a formula-driven thing. Lab is also a formula-driven thing. So so it is really depending on how you want to do it. But if you want to use Bluebeam to measure rebar, you really have to have a very good Excel sheet with good tabulation of formulas. All right. Beyond that, you may not be able to see much of a benefit after all, because the drawings do not detail the actual length of the rebar.
Let's say I measure this length of the rebar. I mean use these Bluebeams, right? So after that, I set the formula in this Bluebeam. Can I use the Bluebeam to do the measurement in certain extent?
Yes, you can, but I think Excel is still a better platform.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
In my opinion. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other question?
This is the user group that I've set up on LinkedIn. Yeah, there's too many of you here right now, but any one of you who is already currently using Bluebeam has a LinkedIn account, whether you are connected with me or not, please do let me know. This is an invite-only group, so yeah, let me know either on this current chat. I would invite you into this group, right? So this group basically is like a more intimate area where we post all the small updates, big updates that Bluebeam has, also tips as well, right? All these guides that I fill in here. Okay, so it has a range of different people. So it has project managers, designers, QSs, consultants as well in this group. Right, so feel free to let me know. Okay, for those who are looking for my profile, this is my profile. Okay, yeah, you should find there. Then just drop me an invite. Okay, as for company wise, please do follow us. Okay, on both platforms, whether both on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. Okay, don't worry, when you do follow the page, we will not spam many messages to you. It's just that whenever we have certain events, some of which are FOC, some of which for existing users, when we have refresher seminars, for example. Okay, so we will post it here, right? So people who see it, you can sign it up